President Sarkozy was at the initiative of what we call the Mediterranean Union, or the Union for the Mediterranean. And one of the major issues was, of course, water, water supply for this region. So the EU is devoting a lot of work, a lot of money, a lot of expertise to try to reduce the gap between the two rivers of the Mediterranean. We do have a major problem in Europe with our southern flank. We do have countries which are facing tremendous problems. One of them is demography. A very large portion of the population is under 20 years old, without any perspective to get enough growth to give jobs for all this population which will arrive on the job market. It's a major issue. We need to develop the economic basis for this country. We need to do more. And that's, from the French point of view, one of the major issues. But we are facing also political issues. And it's very difficult, for example, for Algeria and Morocco to talk together, because they have a long-standing rivalry. They have some issues that are not resolved. Not talking about Israel and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is still, in fact, blocking any attempt to do something meaningful in this region. So we are doing our best, and I think the EU is the main provider of aid also in this region. But we have to face some political realities.
Yeah, I'd just say, I mean, my last overseas posting was in the Republic of Macedonia, which is in Southeast Europe, and what I saw there was that, the real role that the EU plays, coming back to to Graham's point about, the EU as a normative power. The role that the EU played as a normative power in bringing Eastern Europe peacefully into the European Union after the collapse of the Iron Curtain was tremendously powerful. So that, one of the great sort of successes of the last 20 years in foreign policy has been the fact that, countries like sort of Poland, the Czech Republic, went from a very difficult geopolitical situation in 1989 into being, mature members of the European Union less than 20 years later. And I think the challenge for Europe is to sort of, as Graham also said, there is this enormous challenge of Europe, and alluded to by the question, there's this enormous challenge on the southern flank. Clearly we can't offer membership, which was the very strong lever that helped to raise standards. But I think there is a very important role for the EU, both as a provider of aid and also as a sort of facilitator of discussions among countries which badly need a framework within which they can discuss issues in a sort of peaceful context. So there's a huge challenge. Whether Europe's meeting it quite yet, I'm not sure, but it's very, very important. And along with all the sort of internal challenges, that's a major one, for Europe, clearly.
I think there are too many questions, but only one aspect, because now we continue this interaction. We think it would be our wishful thinking that the integration process and the enlargement process go hand in hand. Now we are aware that under the current circumstances, under the current crisis, this is a hurdle which can hardly be overcome. But nevertheless, especially when it comes to the southeastern countries of Europe, we think that the European Union is a sort of unifying element for all the people in the region, because I was also dealing with the region, and we have to maintain this European perspective. And now I expect already the next question: what about Turkey? What is true for southeastern Europe must also be, or is also true for Turkey. We always said, and I don't want to hide now behind diplomatic wordings, but we always said that all the adhesions in the end, all future memberships, it is about fulfilling the criteria. There are there are Copenhagen criteria, and once they are fulfilled, and in this sense it is an open-ended negotiation process, everybody is welcome. And the country for Turkey, where Austria over the last 3 years has become the single most important investor, I think it is a matter of fact that we need Turkey from a strategic point of view, but also from an economic point of view.
Gentlemen, I'd like to ask you a question. We see Europe developing in this crisis, as Thomas has said. We start with a fiscal union, a banking union, maybe an economic union, and a political union. As we look at that development, which has gone rather rapidly for the Europeans, but it seems very slow for the markets, what is it that we should be looking at? We heard from Robert that one of the strategic things we should be thinking about is trading relationship. We've come to understand the single market and its importance to us, and the free trade area that we have essentially already established, or some of it. What are the things that we should be looking at? We're looking at what's the impact for Americans on the banking union? What does it mean? What does it mean when the ministers, the foreign ministers, get together and they talk about a European army? We've been talking about this for 50 years. What does it mean? What should we be looking at? Not that you have the answers to what all the technical things are, but what is it? What's the impact in the transatlantic relationship? Where should we be going? As the United States now rebalances to Asia, what is it that we in the transatlantic relationship should be focused on? Banking, armies, or trade relationships, or North American free trade?
Economic topics and trade, the basis of all good relations among countries, various continents, and so on. If you look into the history, trade relations creating peace, yeah, and understanding among people and continents and so on. And I think this is a very present topic, because we are just now going to reinforce the trade, as has been already mentioned, between the United States and Europe. There are plans to make to create a free trade zone, what will be very difficult, of course, because of contrary interests in the United States and also in Europe or European countries, for competitive reasons and so on and so on. But we have to go this way, I think, and concentrate on this to counter the other big powers in the world like China, Brazil, India, South Africa, and so on and so on, and to form a stronger partnership to defend also Western values and Western economic interests all over the world. And I think apart from creating a more coherent political union, which is difficult, as we saw, which will take time, maybe too long time, maybe a generation or even longer. We already have the tools and the frameworks to work on an economic and commercial and trade level, and I think this is, from my point of view, the most realistic perspective at the moment. Yeah, because Europe is in a turmoil at the moment with all this crisis management, and nobody knows what will happen tomorrow and after tomorrow and so on. But here, with the trade topic, we have something in common, I would say. We have fixed structures and mechanisms and so on to go on, to go straight forward on this way and to create a better economic cooperation between the States and Europe. Thank you.
But you also needed quite a long time, the United States, to bring your act together. So give us also some time, I should say. No, but perhaps now on a more personal level, I think, and I also continue what Mr. Rausch said, I think the problem is in reality that we ourselves at the moment, we don't know exactly where we want to go to. So we have the trade relations. The trade relations are dispute-free, more or less, 95%. So I think we should concentrate on that. And the telephone number to call Europe, as your foreign minister asked for, the question is, do we have it already? Does the President of the European Union, does the President of the European Commission really have this power? This is on a personal level now where I say I don't know.
I think I'd actually pick up on what both Thomas and Helmut have said. I mean, values is very important. If one looks at the world, you have, on each side of the Atlantic, you have, Europe and US, which probably come closer than anywhere else in the world, sort of sharing each other's values. You have a trade relationship, an investment relationship, which already supports 14 million jobs, between us. And I think increasingly what you need is Europe and America to be able to operate as, essentially sort of diplomatic and security partners, which already happens. But clearly one of the things we hope will happen, picking up on what Graham is saying, is that Europe will become a more coherent international actor. So I think in a sense what the US should probably go on doing is asking the challenging questions, which hopefully will persuade the Europeans to continue to sort of raise their game. But it's important in saying that not to lose sight of all the good things that already exist and already happen. And as I say, we think that a free trade agreement which would codify some of that would be a good next step forward, which is deliverable within a politically realistic timetable.
But what should the US look at? In fact, at everything what is happening. In the banking system. In fact, in banking union, we are trying to learn from the Dodd-Frank Act. And so it's an exchange between the US and Europe. I think the main challenge will be to keep a very high interest towards Europe. And from a personal point of view, I think we should start, not trade is important, but education is even more important. The US is such a large country. You tend to forget that there is an outside world. That's a fact. So Europe is here to remind you that you have partners in the world, that we share values, we share democracy, we share a common history. And now I was looking at the figures in a research poll made both in Europe and the US about what the students were thinking about Europe. It's a German Marshall Fund who is doing that every year. And last year, it was striking to see that 76% of the US citizens under 24 were thinking that the future of the US lies in Asia. 26%. If you ask this question in Europe, it's less than 50%. So there is a gap, a discrepancy in perception. Where lies our future? I tend to think that the future lies in the transatlantic alliance and the trade, but also the exchanges between the US and Europe. But there is a challenge there.
Hi, I'm Diane Selden from the University of Illinois at Chicago, and my question for you is more about the political side of sovereignty. As we're talking about these issues that spring up through sovereignty, especially in the European Union, I think it becomes a little hard to define what that is, especially in the current state, because we have, once member states join the EU, what are those mechanisms that we have in the EU to enforce the agreements that you have, and how are those going to change if we are expecting a stronger union to arise, or if we're looking for more flexibility in opt-in and opting out of various programs?
This is an academic question. No, I think I try to give you a political answer. We are facing the challenge at the moment that Europe needs more power, and at the same to overcome the current crisis within the Eurozone, but also within the European Union. At the same time, we face challenges within the Eurozone where people are not ready anymore to transfer this power to the European Union level for various reasons, which also leads to the fact that nationalistic powers are becoming more and more important. We know the countries where these powers are increasing, also in Austria. So this is at the moment the challenge, that we need more power for Europe, as it was mentioned, with the fiscal union, economic union, etc. At the same time, the readiness within the member states, and we all saw what happened in Spain and in Greece during the last days, the readiness to come to an even closer Europe, which is the idea of the European integration process, is put in danger.
Hi, Tom Heath from Trust Financial in Chicago. I was wondering if the panel could comment on the situation in Greece and the austerity measures that seem to have been imposed on them, and how do you see them getting out of this sort of downward spiral in their economy, given the fact that they can't devalue their currency?
Greece is a very specific case. I think we need to first to acknowledge that. Greece is not comparable to Italy or Spain or Portugal. It's a very specific situation. In fact, they were not meeting the criteria of the Eurozone when they joined the Eurozone, for first. And second, they haven't implemented any structural reform in the last 20 years. So it's a very specific case. Regarding what will happen with Greece, frankly speaking, I don't know. Because in fact, as you rightly pointed out, because they don't have the possibility as a member of the Eurozone to devaluate, they don't have any flexibility at all. They need, in fact, to slow down, even to put down the living standard of the people, to diminish the salaries, the different social contributions. It's tough. It's really tough for the Greek population right now. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Ryan Shea from Shea Law. To turn the question to the more immediate future, next 12 to 24 months on the financial side, the Wall Street Journal reporting is accurate. I think the Swiss Central Bank has bought half the annual debt of many of the major Eurozone members. You talked about perhaps there has to be different changes in the structure in the Eurozone. Will you go to a Eurobond? What do you think?
Depends if you ask the French or the Germans. Yeah. I think for the French government, the answer is clearly yes, we'll go to Eurobonds in due time. We need to fulfill some conditions first and to put our house in order. That's we'll see, will be a logical step at the end of the process.
And we would share that view that Eurobonds, as I say, we are very much in favour of closer integration for the countries within the Eurozone as the best way of solving the crisis, and Eurobonds could well be a part of that if the terms were right. We asked the Germans.
Everybody looks I have to say, so far we are against Eurobonds, of course. You don't expect any other answer, I would say, but if you look at the development of the German position during the whole Euro crisis, you will also see that we got more and more open to new ideas. Yeah? And this has been confirmed by asserted by the new project of bond buying policy of the European Central Bank. Yeah? We did not resist this move. Even there is a broad discussion in Germany, within Germany, pro and cons about this kind of policy and this decision. Yeah? The German Central Bank, the Bundesbank, is still against 100% against this kind of policy, and it touches a bit what I said before about the check against delivery. Frankly speaking, as I understand the German European policy, or the policy of the Chancellor, Angela Merkel, she or we want to get something for what we are giving to others, yeah, and this is a broad feeling in the German population. Yeah? Next year we will have elections in Germany. This is to be considered as well. Everybody wants to get re-elected, and there's a feeling that we pay too much for Europe, open speaking, but we are ready to pay if we get something back, and we get something back if we get back if we come to a stronger European Union, in the sense of deeper integration, control mechanisms about on debts, on debt policy, stricter budgets, and so on and so on. So if there will develop a certain coherence between what we want and what others do, I think we can come to a consensus. And as far as I can see, the development has gone into this direction so far, yeah, more or less. As I said at the beginning, before we were, Germany was totally against this kind of bond buying policy and so on. So now we have a smoother position already, but it depends on how things will go on. Yeah? So if you ask me at the moment, I can't say what will be next month or in 1 year. It depends on how other European countries react on the crisis with their fiscal policy, etc., economic policy, internal reforms, strengthening of competitiveness, labor market reforms, and so on, structural reforms.
Sometimes I have the impression that there is a wrong picture in the United States, that these countries, the net contributors, are not doing enough and too reluctant. You should not forget, when it comes, for example, to the European Stability Mechanism, Austria is contributing with guarantees and with direct payments with 20 billion euro. This is a huge amount of money. Germany, I'm not here to defend Germany, but they are contributing with 190 billion. So a lot is being done. A lot has been done already. That's what I want to underline. And Eurobonds, Austrian position, in principle, we are also for Eurobonds. But don't forget, in this case, neither, that the interest rates for Austrian bonds would go up, and this would also cost for Austria an important amount of money. That's how it is. But in the interest of the Eurozone, we are also, as I said, in principle in favor.